Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to take a look at the Daemons of Nurgle range. We are continuing our jaunt through the forests of the Chaos Demons, and we're starting, of course, with the Great Unclean One and Rotigus. Now, these two are excellent. Great models. I love them. There's loads of nice little details to love about these. The disgusting wide grin on the Great Unclean One. The fact that the sword, whilst chunky, has got lots of nice little details in the form of the skulls embedded in the blade, or indeed forged into the blade, given they're also metallic on the artwork here anyway. Yeah, I love this a lot. They're very big models. They're huge. Really chunky, really wide. There's a lot of surface area, which could make them look quite bland and boring if they weren't careful. But they don't. There's lots of there's lots of nice little details all over them. The kind of boils and pustules and scars and bits of tentacle coming out. All gross, but they all look pretty damn awesome. Yeah, they're very nicely done. They're very nicely done. And I've seen some really impressive paint jobs on these as well. Really gross. Absolutely disgusting. Like, the fact that there's just a bit of chainmail, literally, by the look of it, nailed over the arse, does nothing to deter the imagination, given how awful the rest of the Great Unclean One looks. How it walks, we just don't know. Looks like he can barely hold up his own weight. But you know what? It's just so gross. It works so well. All the scars, the bits of flesh that are like rotted away. Ugh, horrible. The sword looks great. It's my favourite weapon, to be honest. Now, if you did it like super rusty, it's really got loads of pockmarks and stuff. I would love to see a super rusty rendition of that. The bell is fun. That alternative head is okay, but I just feel it lacks the grim confidence of this one. This one's very menacing. Like, between the antlers, the big wide grin, and the absurdly large back teeth, the little pig eyes as well, it just looks super dangerous and really inhuman. There's something a little bit goofy about this. I think I'd like it more if the tongue wasn't sticking out of the face. I think if you cut the tongue off, that would make it look a bit bad. Because it's got the little face sticking out at the end of the tongue, which just doesn't do it for me personally. Other than that, I think without that, it would look okay. Plus, the single eye, I don't know what it is. I just don't feel like the single eye works on this model. I couldn't tell you why, but it's just one of those things. It just doesn't hit the spot the same. Now, Rotigus I also like as well. Rotigus Rainmaker, to give full title. The extra face coming out of the other arm is a disgusting detail. That's really well done as well. It looks really grim. The fact you've got another mouth in the gut too, instead of the intestines spilling out. There's lots of little extra details on this one that really set it apart. It's really awful. Like, it's. I would argue Rotigus is actually more disgusting than the standard one, which is impressive because the standard one is really gross. Really is. They outdid themselves with just ick factor on these. No matter how many times you look at them, you will see another detail later that will make you go, ugh. And you'd think that by the time you've looked at it for any length of time, you couldn't possibly go, ugh, again. And yet you do. Absolutely awful. Fantastic. Really good model. Terrible, but brilliant at the same time. Which is surely what you want from this sort of thing, right? That's what you want from Nurgle. Gross but impressive. That's what you want. Speaking of which, the Plague Bearers, actually, I really like. I like the Plague Bearers a lot. There's a lot going on with them. They are quite busy, because they're covered in boils and scars, and they've got mouths in their stomachs. The single, I get why there's the single eye option for the Great Unclean. I do get it, because the Plague Bringers are single-eyed, for the most part. There's a couple with fly eyes and 3 eyes, but generally speaking, you're looking at 1 eye each. And I get the kind of mirroring that, but I'm losing my train of thought just looking at these. It's like, some of it is silly, disgusting, where you got a face sticking out of the, just a little head resting in the stomach. Some of it is just outright awful, like the intestines falling out of the bottom of the torn stomach is really just not very nice. The Nurgling pulling on one of them as well, gross. The exposed spine on that one, ugh. Just horrible. Horrible, but they do look really cool. They're properly horrible, but they do look really cool. They are, yeah, they've... There's something a little bit, I don't know, cute isn't the word. They just also seem a little bit jolly, you know? Just a little bit playful. got a little bit of a grin here and there, even though the skin is literally falling off their bodies and there's horrendous, like, boils coming through. They're really gross, but I don't know, they just work really well. The swords as well, I do like how like, growth-like and not even sharp the swords look. They just look... They don't really look kind of like proper weapons necessarily, but that just suits the rest of the model really well. They are definitely vile and horrible, but I don't know, they're classic. They're classic. They're aging really well. They just work. They just work, the Plague Bearers. They just work. I really like them. They're just great. Also, the Plague Drones are really, really nicely done as well. Of course, they've got the Plague Bearers riding them, which is fine, but the kind of the knackered wings, the knackered insect wings, the bulbous little bodies with the... It's not even a stinger because it's got its own mouth. The far too like human mouth sticking out the end. Really gross. They look a bit like bumbling and incapable of flight. In a way, they look sort of like they'd fly around like a bee. Like they just look a bit fat to get anywhere. But I don't know. They still have their own kind of menace to them. I will admit that I don't know about the colour of the carapace on them for this like paint job. They look a bit more... They look drab, but not in a good way. Just in a kind of boring kind of way. Whereas actually I think a lot of Nurgle stuff, there's a nice contrast between a lot of like especially like the kind of pale green and the pink and red of the disgusting bits, which the Plague Drones are kind of lacking, unfortunately. They are good models though. They are good models. Again, loads of detail. It'd be really easy for them to be very bland and kind of rubbish to paint and look at, but no, you've got lots of little bits of detail all over them. Kind of holes and stuff in the sides of the abdomen and things. Oh, like little faces poking out and screaming. Absolutely disgusting. Really grim. Like properly grim, these. The 3 eyes as well on that one. I think, have they all got 3 eyes? I forget. Yeah, like the central and then one on either side is just weird. Really weird. They're just super creepy, these. Super creepy. They're a lot of fun to look at. I bet they're fun to paint, but yeah, there's just something so, like, even more so than a lot of the other demon stuff. And of course, like, the demon stuff is all unnatural because it's all demon based. There's something unnatural about these because they are kind of, I think, so... They're almost rooted in reality. They almost look like they could be actual, horrible flies, but things are swollen out of proportion. Like the 2 sets of wings are so like torn and rotten. They're kind of close enough to think that maybe this could be a thing, but just not like this because this looks terrible. And how would it work? And it shouldn't work, but there it is flying towards you. I really like them. They look good. Now, we couldn't get too far in without covering these lads. The Nurglings, the classic Nurglings, the little happy fellas. The sassy Nurgling, of course, still the best Nurgling, but the little piles of them. Absolutely wouldn't want to paint these. Wouldn't want to paint them. They're cute and they're silly, and I think it's just become the thing where it's like Nurglings are just cute and silly. I would not want to paint an entire base of Nurglings. I just wouldn't. I'd lose the will, I would just lose the will. I know I would. I know I would. They might be cute and sassy, but they're just... There's too many bodies there. Actually, you know what? I like it more when they're painted uniformly. I think that works a little bit better. So the lad eating the intestines is disgusting, unsurprisingly. It's very difficult not to just describe things as disgusting. I've never noticed that before. He's getting poked in the eye by the one above him. I've never noticed that. Is that a Nurgling's arse just sticking out? Is there a Nurgling like mooning out the front there? No, that can't be what that is, can it? Nah, I'm sure that's not what it is. But I've never noticed the one getting poked in the eye before. That's a great detail. The one pulling the tongue out of the other one, that's easily noticeable. But yeah, that eye poke is a thing of... it's so mean. It's just so harsh. Leave him alone. Just because he's on the bottom of the pile. I mean, he's having issues enough. Look, his intestines are falling out of himself. Don't need to poke him in the eye as well. God damn, harsh. It's harsh. It's harsh in Nurgling Town. They just poke each other in the eye. Oh man, I like him. Oh, look at him, little mischievous scamps, the lot of them. Now I'm afraid we get into I say we get into some that I'm not so keen on. The Herald of Nurgle I quite like. The Herald of Nurgle's cool. The horns growing out of the back is a nice touch. The arm just falling apart and the skin flap holding the bell is creepy. Could do without the tongue sticking out. I just don't think that adds anything to it necessarily. The intestines dripping out of the stomach, of course, a classic staple. You've got to have that. And little trophies hanging off. I do quite like that as well. Overall, the Herald is pretty solid. I do like the Herald. It works well. It looks good. The fact that one leg is like swollen as well compared to the other is a nice touch. It's a pretty cool model. A lot of nice little details over it that I think make it something a little bit special. The thing is, the Herald is fine. The Herald looks good. What I have an issue with are these two. The Spoilpox Scrivener, and really don't like the Sloppity Ballpiper's name. Can't remember what I originally thought of these when they were revealed, however long ago. A while ago now. But I seem to remember quite liking this guy, except I kind of go back and forth. On it. It's some aspects I really like. The scrolls and stuff being tied up in the intestines and stuffed under the skin is gross and horrible. Absolutely approve of that. Like that a lot. The quill is too fancy. It's been painted too fancy. It looks too fancy. It should be a stick. He should have like a rotten stick, not an actual quill. How is that surviving being anywhere near him? It just doesn't work with the rest of the model. It's too garish for what the rest is. The thing that I think I struggle with more than anything really is the big mouth, because the placement of it bugs me for some reason. I almost feel like it would have been more disgusting to actually have his face be relatively normal but with a giant mouth underneath it, as opposed to it being this kind of elephant trunk situation that's going round and then onto his shoulder. Because the mouth looks too heavy to rest up there. But the big trunk going round to join up with the mouth doesn't look like muscular enough to hold it. It does kind of look like it's got a slug thing going on, but that's not immediately obvious. That's not something that jumps out to me. So it's a little bit kind of, I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I'm just not sure of the execution anymore. And I think a similar thing goes for the Sloppity Ballpiper. Annoying name aside. The dancing Nurgling on the base is hilarious and I love it. The actual Ballpiper himself is, there's stuff on there that I just don't get necessarily. Like the whole jester's hat thing going on with his stick that he waves around. I don't know why, but it just is super distracting to me. It just kind of jumps out as being just, it's where my eye goes, and it kind of takes it away from the rest of the model. Like the bulk of the model is not, like, relatively speaking, it's not near that. So the eye being like drawn right to the top of the model is a bit weird. It's kind of, yeah, I don't know. There's just something about it that just doesn't quite sit right now. There's nice little details again, like the bagpipes themselves are gross and cool, but yeah, it's I think there's just too much energy there. There's too much energy to it. I think that's the problem. Because even like the Spoilpox Scrivener got a massive mouth, but he's standing with a kind of weird stance. But he's just standing and shouting. Then you've got the Poxbringer, which is standing and pointing. The Nurglings are in a big pile. They look like they're going to flood towards you, so there's a bit of kind of like energy and excitement going on there, but not a huge amount. The plague drones look slow and bumbling and inevitable. Just look like they're just going to slowly coast towards you. Then you've got, obviously, the plague bearers, which again have a very similar feel. And the Great Unclean one just never looks like it's going to actually get to you because it's so massive and chunky. And then you've got the Sloppity Ballpiper, who's jumping and dancing and full of energy, and I know that there's like supposed to be like a joy to Nurgle and a happiness to Nurgle, and that's what this represents, and I totally get that, but it's so at odds with everything else. Like, it's so extremely at odds with everything else that it stands out in a way that I don't think is complimentary. I think it's distracting, is my issue with it. Lots of nice detail, but the attitude of the model is totally different to everything else, and it just throws me every time now. By contrast, you've got like the Beast of Nurgle, which is quite cartoony again, but again doesn't look full of like vim and vigor. They look happy, but they don't look quick. They don't look like agile and lithe. They just look gross and like they're going to spend ages getting to you, and it's going to be awful when they do. The detail of the actual contents of that stomach is not what we needed to see. But there you go, that's what you get. It's what you get from Nurgle. They're a bit kind of amorphous blob-like, but that suits Nurgle down to the ground, really. I mean, you know, he's starting off with the Great Unclean one. Clearly it's a look that he likes. The ring of horror teeth in the stomach on that one as well is my favourite bit. Absolutely horrible. Gross. Following on from the beasties, we've got Horticulus Slimex, which I actually quite like certain bits of. The face on the snail I just don't like. It doesn't do it for me. I'd like a more traditional look to the snail. The little legs, I don't mind. They put me in mind of the luggage, so it's hard to dislike them. But just off that basis alone. The snail shell is really cool. I really like the snail shell with the tree growing out of the top of it. Yeah, there's some cool stuff. There's some cool stuff to this model. The fact that he's dragging like an iron plough behind him is a nice touch. The little gardening implements hanging off the side. There's loads of cool little details going on with this thing. But my main thing that I always find myself disliking is just the face. The face on the snail. Again, it's one of those ones that I just find distracting. I don't find it really adds much. It just kind of draws my my eye away from all the cool little details to just look at the ugly, distracting cartoon stuck on the front. It's, again, very much a personal thing, but it just doesn't do it for me. Just doesn't do it for me, which is a pity because I actually really like the rest of the model. I will say that Horticulus himself, with his like disgusting, distended, burst open stomach, but yet somehow looking a bit muscular. Like there's almost a little bit of, like, he looks a little bit ripped in a way. It's a really interesting and horrible contrast that works super well. It works really well. I like that a lot. He's a really cool character. The design is really nice. We also have the Feculent Gnarlmaw as well, which I actually quite like. As a scenery piece, it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty cool. It's very grim and otherworldly. The bells hanging from the branches is nice. The weird tentacle wavy bits that come out of the top, I do quite like. Also, the integration of the symbol of Nurgle, I feel works better on this than it did on the Death Guard terrain that just had like 3 big chimney things that had balls at the bottom of them. It just didn't work for me. It was too forced. Finally, we've got Epidemius, which is getting on a bit now. He's getting on a bit. He's definitely could do with a refresh. It's a very grim model. It's very dark. It's yeah. There's something about it that is very creepy in a good way, but it's definitely showing its age in a big way at this point. Like there's a lot of kind of miscellaneous detail that doesn't really look like anything, but feels like it should look like something. Things like the skulls in the back of the throne. There's a bit of blurred line between where the wood kind of joins the skull, and it looks a little bit off. Things like the flag being super thick in one section. It kind of tapers off to a sensible size, but yeah, there's just bits all over this that could do with an update. It is a very old model at this point. I'm not entirely sure when it came out, but if I remember right, do obviously correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm pretty sure this at the very least was from Fantasy originally, and the model was released when Fantasy still existed, and then some, I believe, anyway. Definitely showing its age. Definitely showing its age. It also doesn't help that it's a totally different, like, approach to painting. Like, the paint looks far older. Been painted in a totally different style. But, yeah, it just could definitely do with a refresh, an update, like a reimagining. Something a bit more grand, maybe. Or maybe something, maybe not grand, but just more up to modern standards, It's very telling when you go from that to that. Like, there's just been such a vast improvement in how detail is done. And kind of how much, like, I guess like higher definition new models are in a way. It shows. It really shows. Great Unclean one is still solid though. Absolutely quality model. Love it. Absolutely love it. Let me know in the comments down below what your favourite model from this range is. As before, we are nearing the end of our dip into the Chaos Demons range. This is the 3rd out of 4, so look out for the Slaanesh one coming hopefully day after tomorrow. That's what I'm aiming for anyway. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video subscribe, all that stuff. And as always, there's an affiliate link for Element Games in the description, which you can use to support the channel if you like. I leave it in your capable hands. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.